Bienvenidos a todos esta noche, aquí a Alfa Omega del Powerhouse, donde nos reunimos, como ustedes saben, todos los meses, en el programa de Next in Line, donde profundizamos en temas que son de importancia para toda persona, bien seas empresario, ama de casa, trabajador o simplemente como un servidor soñador, una persona que sueña en cosas que a veces uno no ve y ve visiones y trata de llegar a cosas que no están al alcance de uno, pero que uno sueña y se traza una meta de una visión, un lugar donde uno quiere llegar. Esta noche tenemos un programa muy especial. También esta noche marcamos un cambio, una transición en el programa Next in Line. En los próximos 5 meses van a haber una transición. Yo voy a estar cambiando de aquí de protagonista y de host a la persona que está atrás de la cortina, como el Executive Director, y estas dos damas que me acompañan, que son líderes del Ministerio de Empresarios, ellas toman la rienda y ya empezando en enero, el show es de ellas. Es más, en enero yo voy a ser el invitado y voy a comparecer en un tema que creo que se llama la ley del legado. Así que en enero no se lo pierdan, que voy a estar aquí todavía, pero ahora de invitado. Esta noche también va a ser un poquito diferente, va a ser, vamos a decir en Spanglish. El invitado de honor es cubano-americano. Creo que es la única persona que yo he invitado aquí que tiene más edad que yo, así que hoy me siento un bebé. Pero él se ve muy bien, y está fuerte como un trinquete. Pero el tema en cual va a hablar, él lo ha desarrollado siempre en inglés y ha escrito mucho sobre el tema. Así que cuando él empiece, vamos a cambiar, pero él tiene toda la potestad de en cualquier momento regresar al idioma de Cervantes, que es su idioma natal. Él nació en Habana, Cuba. Las dos damas que me acompañan son mi mano derecha y mano izquierda, Alexandra Puello y Lara Carol Fernández. Son excelentes mujeres motivadoras. Ellas van a estar llevando, vamos a decir, las entrevistas hoy, haciéndole preguntas a nuestro invitado de honor. Y yo la verdad que me siento honrado de estar acompañado por ellas esta tarde, esta noche. Y sé que ellas van a hacer una labor encomiable cuando tomen el liderazgo completamente, empezando en enero. Y en ese enero, ese mes, voy a hablar de la importancia de transición y legado, que es un tema que si eres muy joven, no te es tan importante, pero si ya llegas a cierta edad, que estás llegando al 8º, 9º inning de béisbol, ya tú sabes que tienes que pensar en ciertas cosas, qué es lo que tú dejas, cuál es tu propósito en esta vida, y eso es lo que vamos a tratar en enero. Pero hoy tenemos un tema muy interesante, que es el tema del liderazgo y cómo encontrar felicidad. Típicamente, si yo estuviera hablando aquí, iba a buscar un tema basado en la Biblia. Mitch no viene aquí hoy, nuestro invitado, como pastor ni reverendo. Él va a hablar de una forma secular. Lo que yo al escuchar las cosas los temas que él va a tocar, yo los veo igual que él, pero con una matiz diferente, con una matiz que está basado en la Biblia. ¿Por qué? Porque es que Cristo Jesús, desde el momento que fue bautizado en el río Jordán por su primo hermano Juan el Bautista, le dedicó los 3 años de ministerio a una cosa. Todas las personas piensan en los milagros, en lo que sanó. No. El enfoque de Cristo Jesús fue entrenar, enseñar y motivar a sus discípulos a ser líderes, llevando el evangelio a toda esquina. Así que el tema de liderazgo era el tema de gran importancia para Cristo Jesús, y por eso es que es un tema de liderazgo que en el Ministerio de Empresarios le ponemos tanto énfasis. Es más, que uno de nuestros invitados, que participó el año pasado, que está hoy aquí sentado en la segunda fila, que también es ministro de esta iglesia, el señor Rodrigo Aspurúa, ha tomado las primeras 12 conferencias y en su manera él está creando un libro muy interesante de liderazgo, y yo le aplaudo a él por ese trabajo que está haciendo, y va a ser publicado ese libro. Y creo que lo que va a hablar hoy nuestro invitado va a ser parte de algún capítulo en ese libro. Pero yo sé que va a ser impactante para todos ustedes los que van a estar escuchando esta noche. Así que voy a cambiar ahora. Y Mitch, I always say that the most important thing is to always do the most important thing first. So I'm going to ask all of you, please bow your heads so that we can go before the throne of Jesus in prayer. Father, Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the opportunity to be right here right now at Alpha and Omega Church. We thank you for every person that has joined us. We thank you for their families. We thank you for their loved ones and their descendants. We thank you for the life of Lara Carolina and Alexandria Puello. May you bless them, guide them, and always give them the wisdom and discernment. May you bless our speaker. May your word, Father Lord, guide him with the wisdom that is only yours, so that every word that comes out of your mouth is a word that connects with us. We thank him for his life. We thank him for his trajectory and for what he has done for this community, Father Lord. Father, we thank you because you're here tonight. Your presence is the most important of all. It is written that where two or more are gathered, invoking your name, Father, you're here with us, and your presence anoints us. And we glorify your name, Father Lord. We give you all the honor and all the praise. We declare in faith that your word says who we are, that your word says what we have, and in your word we believe what we can do. We declare that we're more than conquerors in Jesus who loves us. And the people of God say, amen. So our speaker is an icon in this community. He was born in Cuba. He is an electrical engineer by training. He studied at MIT, where he received his master's, and his PhD. He was a faculty of Stanford, of Harvard, and of MIT. He is the first Cuban American to be the president of a state university in the country. And what's most interesting about this gentleman, who's also an author, New York Times bestseller, Future Energy, and also CEO of two tech companies that today are Fortune 500 companies, is the fact that, and this is important to note, from Maine to Florida, from New York to California, you round up all the state universities, all the public institutions of higher learning. The average tenure of a university president is 6 years. I want to say that again. Across the country, in the history of this great nation, the average tenure of what a university president lasts at a state university, is 6 years. Mitch Maidike was president of FIU for 23 years. I don't know how many of you here have attended FIU. Let me see some hands. Go Panthers. But the name that it carries in the También campus, the Modesto A. Maidike campus, bears his name for the legacy that he left. I must tell you, we would not have a school of engineering. We would not have a school of architecture. We would not have a law school. We would not have a school of business. And we would not have a medicine school if it wasn't for this gentleman. So without further ado, it is my pleasure and my honor to have with us a great man, a great friend, definitely someone that in the scale of know-how, they don't come too many persons like Mitch Maidike. And he's gonna, I think you're gonna enjoy his perspective on leadership, how it relates to happiness and self-fulfillment and other factors that I think you will all reason, and you may say, you know what? Now that I think of it, he's so right. So, Mitch, the floor is yours, and I know Lara Carolina and Alexandra are going to be asking you a bunch of questions, and we have a marker board for you so that you can do your thing, and we're going to follow you, and so here we go.
Thank you. That was a remarkable introduction, as they like to say. My father would have loved it. My mother would have believed it. If there is no one, however, that has even the great Willie Bermeo, that has given me a complete, that he said, well, I was an Arthur Mary dance instructor, and that is the way I worked myself through my PhD. And this is really funny. I was about 25, 23. My students were in their 40s and late 30s. I would hide and go out through the back door so they wouldn't think that I was with any of these older women. Now I look at women in 30s and 40s. I think they're very young, don't you?
Thank you.
Now, let me start with a confession. I made a mistake in preparing my presentation for today. I went to Willie. Actually, there'll be a question at the end here. I went to Willie and I said, Willie, I could talk about the intersection, some new research on the intersection between happiness and leadership. You know, yeah. And I said, also, over 10, 15 years that I've been teaching, I've come up with a really simple way of explaining what leadership is. Oh, yeah, yeah. Then I said, I also believe, unlike a lot of the people that teach leadership, that there are good leaders and there are bad leaders, not in terms of results, but in terms of their ethics and their morals. So I have a whole area, you know, this is a course that goes on for 3 or 4 months. I said, and finally, I have a new model of leadership for the age of artificial intelligence. Then I made the mistake of asking Willie, you know, which talk would you prefer? What do you think he said?
All of them.
All of the above. So I had to think back to being introduced in the chamber many, many years ago when I said we're going to have, this is the typical look of someone, you know, sitting in the chamber, Greater Miami Chamber, 500 people. And I'm saying, FIU is going to have a College of Engineering. FIU is going to have a College of Architecture. FIU is going to have a law school. FIU is going to have a medical school. Who is this guy? Who is this crazy guy? With the University of Florida, University of Miami, Florida State, Miami-Dade, all opposing. How is this going to be possible? So then one of my friends introduced me in the chamber that day, and he said, you may not believe what Mitch is going to tell you, what he's going to do, but Mitch is known, he said, that I was known for making the impossible inevitable. So I think that's what Willie is trying to get me to do today. Basically, we're talking about a 26-class, 13-week course that I've been perfecting over 12 years, and this character wants me to tell you in 45 minutes. So without further ado, let's start with another question. If there was a scale of happiness between 0 to 10, okay, let's say 6 or 7, okay, 8 or 9, you're doing pretty well, and 10, you have reached nirvana. You can't get any happier. How many of you think you are 6s? Pretty good group you got here. 7s? 8s? 9s? 10s? Okay, since there aren't that many 10s, I think a little more happiness. There are 8s and 9s. You know, I didn't see a 10, but maybe there is a 10. Two shot, two. Oh, okay, congratulations. Let me tell you where research on happiness begins. There's a man called Marty Seligman. He was the president of the American Psychological Association. And his daughter came to, his daughter was 6 or 7, and said, Daddy, why are you so grumpy all the time? And he started to think about it. He said, you know, psychologists, and I'm sure there's some psychologists in the audience here, he told her, well, you know, it's the nature of my job. And he started to think, he said, you know, thousands, tens of thousands of psychologists across the country, they deal with the 15%, with the 15% of people that are troubled, that have problems. Maybe they have even some psychiatric, illness. So if you deal with people like that the whole day, First of all, you don't do anything for the other 85, which I think is most of the people in this room, if not all. And you spend your time with people that are deeply troubled in one way or the other. So then a week later, he speaks. He's now the president of the American Psychological Association. And he says, you know, all of you have been working, imagine if you're there, all of you have been working on the wrong stuff. We're working on a small minority of people, and we know from research that most of those people, we can't even help them. So maybe we can only help 5, 6, 7 of them. Let's start to think about the rest. And that began in the year 2000, research on positive psychology and happiness. He called it positive psychology. So the stuff that I'm talking about, your grandmother wouldn't tell you about it. Your father wouldn't tell you. You yourself, I mean, this is new stuff. And the question then is, what are the interventions, if there are, if they exist, that can bring you greater happiness? And dozens, if not hundreds of people have been researching that question across the country. And I want to talk about just one of those studies for a minute and then return to the more general question. In Finland, where they have tremendous data on people, they know when you were born, where you went, they have a phenomenal health system. So they know all about you. They did like 10, 20,000 people. And there's a question coming here. What did they find in the happiness of those people when they went to a higher leadership position? Who'd like to comment on that? Anybody? What do you think happens when Jimmy?
They say money.
Money, yeah, okay, that's good. It's true.
Imposter syndrome.
Jimmy?
Imposter syndrome.
Could be. That's right. What else? What do you think happens to their happiness? Who said increases? Okay. Why? Why do you think it increases?
They feel a sense of purpose, of helping and giving back.
Sure, that's a very lofty. Anybody else?
They're in control.
That is the main. Some are like that. Some say, now I can do greater good. But the prevailing feedback was, now I have greater control over my life. So it's not, you got to be there at 8:30. You call in and you say, look, not coming in till 11 today. Why? I have a meeting with some people that we're not going to, we're not going to say who they are. We don't want that to be well known. You're the boss. Now that's the easy part. Now you're here and you go up. What do you think happens? You're in the job 5, 6, 7, 10 years, maybe 10 years. You're in late 50s, 60s, and you retire. What do you think does your happiness? Does it go back to where you were? Let's say you started at 8. Then when you became a leader, you jumped up to 9. What do you think happens after 7? Yes. Jimmy?
Like after you spend 10 years doing that, usually that happiness that you got at the beginning,
Right.
down the way to a 2 because the responsibility and the stress,
Yeah, that can happen.
your shoulder,
That can happen.
go out the window.
Okay. What do you think? Over 10,000 people, what did they find? Anybody else? Do I see a hand? Okay. What they found is that your happiness drops because, as you were saying, you have less control. But it doesn't go back to where you were. If you're an 8 and you jumped up to 9, they found you dropped to 8.5. Yes, there are some that just crash. There are some that have done a terrible job and all of a sudden they're embarrassed. But most people who did a reasonable job look back at what they did and they're proud of it. Let me give you an example. Who do you think designed that entrance to our? My name is on it, but I didn't design it. Who do you think designed it? Any idea? Jimmy? That was about 30, 40 years ago. You proud of it?
I sure am.
And I'm proud to have my name on his entrance to our campus. So let me, however, now turn not so much to the relationship between leadership and happiness, but then the question becomes, what can you do other than become a leader to be happy? And there's a book which I'd recommend to any of you who are interested in it. There are books about the theory, the concept, the neuropsychology, but it's a very straightforward book by a Russian woman, Sonia Luverminsky. And Sonia says, this is the how. This is how you become happy. I don't care about, the neurodynamics of what's happening. I'm going to tell you, do this, 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 this. And she has like 8 or 10 interventions. I'm just going to talk to you about one because for me, it's been tremendously powerful. That is, if you are kind to others, you will be happier. I once asked the Dalai Lama, one of the great privileges of my life is I've spent like 3 hours alone with the Dalai Lama. And I said, Your Holiness, I was thinking of a couple of people. What about what you can't be kind? He says, be kind. That was his answer. And I'll give you an example of something that happened to me about a year ago. Most of you know Coral Way is divided into 2 parts, particularly in the Miracle Mile, area. So I see a woman trying to press the button in the middle of the block to cross the street. She can hardly get there. She's in a wheelchair, okay? So I'm gonna have to get you to help me. Hold. Yes. So I'm standing there. The woman, looked quite different. She's an older woman. So, I look at her and I go to the street and look and go like this. All the traffic stops. I say, come on. The woman crosses to the middle. Then I do a more risky thing. I do the same thing on the other side, but I see a Porsche 911 Carrera going, God told me to do this, so I go there. The guy not only comes screeching to a halt, the woman crosses the street. When I first looked at him, he saw what I was doing, and he went like this. That man will do something kind that day. Now, you can be kind to your friends, to your children, but the most genuine kind of kindness is doing something for someone you don't know or scarcely know. I don't know who the woman was. I don't know anything about her. Hey, if she'd been a Cuban woman who lived in the corner of my house. Okay. The best kind of kindness is when there is no transaction. When, you have a business cutting the grass and I do this favor, then you come, you cut my grass. No. You're passing through in the street, a guy tries to jump him, I kick the guy. And I never see you again because you're on. So in general, kindness is my assistant making sure that you did a great job holding the mic. Kindness is kindness, but if you're kind to a complete stranger that has absolutely there was a girl in my class, actually, should say a woman in my class, that wants to dedicate her life to saving stray cats and dogs. Not something I would do, but, that is, absolute great kindness.
I'm going to jump in.
Sure.
Jesus used to say that there was no reward in returning love. In other words, someone that loves you and you love that person back, that's easy.
That's transaction.
That's a transaction. So even this topic, there's a biblical basis that, agape, that unconditional love, is what you give to someone that may not even be deserving of the love, or that you're not. If you're expecting something in return, you say, que poco agradecido esta persona. You are lending something. Okay? If you're expecting that someone is grateful, you are expecting something back. You're expecting something. When you give unconditionally, it doesn't matter if nothing comes back. And that's tough. That's why it's a very tough situation to say that's unconditional. Why say unconditional? Because there's no condition. where it's not pure for you. And what Mitch is saying right now is so true in terms of happiness, doing something kind.
Willie, you're in trouble because you've just earned a position, don't you think? Sebastian, my assistant, is here. I'll introduce him in a minute. He has earned a position as one of our speakers, don't you think? It so reinforces what so we'll talk about that later. But anyway, this book has a whole list of things. If you wake up in the morning and you say, thank God I'm alive, that'll make you happier. Mm-hmm. If you, at some point in the day, say, I'm grateful today because I met this wonderful guy, this wonderful gal. I'm grateful today because the food was great. Just 3 or 4, it doesn't have to be my heart transplant worked. It could be a very little thing. And there's a whole bunch of things you can do like that, which make you grateful and which cause you to help others. That's happiness. Now, how does that relate to leadership? Another research project that has been done shows that leaders, it's really coincident with what, once you show the first slide. This is what happens. Obviously, this is a great simplification. It doesn't go up like that. But in general, your happiness goes up when you go to a higher leadership position, and it comes down. Like in my case, I was happier when I was, actually a lot of people ask me, what do you miss most about FIU? Is it the money? Is it the glory? Is it the recognition? Is it the gratitude? No. The thing I miss the most is that when my successor or successors, I should have made that decision for them, but other people have to learn their way. So I miss it, but I look back and I say, my goal was to come here and to give this community a major ranked research university, which is the top of the pile of the 5,000 colleges and universities in the nation. And FIU is currently ranked 46, and our future plan says we want to be ranked 30th amongst public universities, in the nation. One thing that Willie didn't mention in his very generous introduction is I was the longest serving public university president in America when I retired.
And 23.
So what you should be able to deduce from here is that leaders are actually happier than the average. They drop a bit, after a while. But the point is that it is very satisfying to be able to lead an entire institution and take it, in different directions. So that's, at this point, you may want to ask, what on earth is leadership? And this is the first time I taught my course 12 years ago on leadership. The student comes to me and says, Professor, I really appreciate all the books, all the things, but could you make it a little simpler so we could understand? So I wrote a paper. The paper was 4 or 5 pages, but then a couple of years passed and the paper grew to 30 or 40 pages. So then I had a student come and say, there's a lot of stuff in that paper. What is really the essence of the paper? Could you simplify that for me? I said, okay. So I tried 3 or 4 times, and I'm going to tell you now is how I explain leadership. By the way, we're about a third of the way through the course, so I need to keep moving to satisfy Willie's gluttony for learning. Next. Okay, this is the simplest description of leadership you will ever hear, I think. The first part of leadership, maybe for this church, is coming closer to Jesus, saving souls, making people or contributing to people being better citizens and better friends, better family members. If you know your purpose, you've solved an enormous part of the leadership problem. And as it turns out, the loftier your purpose is, the better leader will be. If you say, my purpose is to make a buck. I got $100,000, but I want to be a multimillionaire. That's what I want to do. Okay? But that is not the same as saying, this is my community. I want to build a church. I want to build a university. I want to build a business that'll solve this problem for this community. So that's part one. The second part is people. I wonder if I could talk to you, because I talk with both my hands. If you could help me with the microphone, it'd be better if I had a lapel. Okay, so thank you.
Sure. I understand.
Okay,
It's fine.
it's part of being Cuban. If you've licked that part, then the second part is, I'm going to tell you, about a couple of years ago, I had one of the proudest moments of my entire life. I was checking, I forget which one, whether it was Grok or any of the other ones. ChatGPT is the one I use the most, artificial intelligence. And I said, I started out as a designer of chips, analog integrated circuit chips. And I did that for a while until I found someone that was much better than me at doing it. I said, okay, I'm going to be a manager. I'm going to pay you half of what I pay. I'm going to manage you, and you're going to do better work than I was doing. And then together, we said, there is one guy in the world that's better than him. And we went to England, and we recruited the guy and brought him to Massachusetts. Then I looked, and the first guy was Paul Brokaw, and the second one was Barry Gilbert. And I went to, and I asked, I think it was ChatGPT, tell me who were, in the history of analog chip design, integrated circuits, who are the top 3 people in that field ever? And the first name that they gave me was the name of Bob Weidler, who was an absolutely crazy person who drove himself into a tree, killed himself. And if he hadn't killed himself that way, he'd have killed himself in another way. He was number one because he's the first one to realize that you could use integrated circuits, which were digital up to that point, to make analog circuits, multipliers, amplifiers, what have you. And when they mentioned the other 2, one was Paul Brokaw. The other one was Barry Gilbert. So at one point in my life, Willie, I had the 2 top designers in my field in the world working for me. That's people. How can you go wrong? When I hired Barry Gilbert, I'll make this very quick because it's a long story, from Plessy Electronics in England, I was able to go there, talk to him, and he said, I can't work for you. I said, why? He says, my mom has cancer, she's dying, and I want to be here with her in her last few days. I said, okay, Barry, you have a big basement. I'll build you a laboratory. He said, that's going to be hundreds of thousands, no problem. He said, well, it's like the little mouse, with the mouse with the milk, and after the milk, you wanted a cookie. He said, I'm going to need technicians. How many? 2. You got them. In addition to that, he said, I'm going to have to go to Boston, to meet with you guys and tell you what I'm doing. And I said, 2 first-class trips for you and your wife to Boston. Okay. Then, okay, I'll double your salary. Oh, no, that's too much. I said, okay, Barry, what would be a reasonably good or a very good increase? 50%. I said, okay, you got it, 50%. I get back home. I talk to our vice president of finance. He says, you crazy? You're just blowing over $1 million over this character. Yeah, I realize he's good, but we got other good people here. Barry Gilbert brought in, I talked to the founder of Analog years later. I said, how much do you think Barry brought in? 300-400 million? He said, no, closer to $500 million worth of products with a 90% margin. So I invested $1 million, and got 90% of 500, 450 million. And that was year after year, after year. After that, the vice president of finance never questioned anything that I wanted to do. Then the final thing, and this has to do with the research I'm going to tell you at the end, another dimension of this talk. We have found that companies don't go like this. They go boom, boom. The ones that are very successful, it's like sailing a boat. I don't know how many of you are sailors. Miami, you're all familiar with sailing. You don't just go straight. You tack to the right, you tack to the left, tack to the right. And that is what makes companies really successful. If Amazon had stayed as a bookstore, there'd be 50 million or so, rather than tens of billions of dollars. You have to go back and forth. For instance, when integrated circuits came out, RCA, Sylvania, General Electric, all of those companies continued to make vacuum tubes. Integrated circuits basically put them out of business. So if you have a purpose, if you hire extraordinarily good people, and you realize that you will be pivoting back and forth, that is the essence of corporate success. At Steve Jobs, who I dislike personally, but he is one of, I know him, knew him, I should say, but the guy was brilliant. He said, at Apple, we bring in the very best people in the world, and then they tell us what to do. So you don't bring people that are better than you and say, this is what, no. What should we do? And that's the way that Barry Gilbert and Paul Brokaw managed to make it for us. On that score of excellent people, I want you to know that a lot of the credit for this presentation goes to a star student. FIU has 55,000 students. Of those 55,000, only 3,000 are honor students. But it turns out when I started to first teach, I taught only honor students. But every once in a while, a dud slipped in. So I said, I'm only going to teach honor students that have an A- average. If you have a B+, you can say, please let me in. Maybe. But typically, you don't get in. So one of those students who is, what do they call him, a man for all seasons, is here with me today. Sebastian, would you stand for a minute? And the ideas are mostly, not all, mostly mine with the help, of Sebastian, and the presentation is all him. I would know how to do this. So next slide. Now, what that previous slide said, if you do those things, you'll be successful. But Hitler could have learned something. Mussolini, whatever dictator you choose, could have achieved. But the question is, achievement by itself. Stalin could say, I killed 40 million people, and that's how we industrialized Russia. So you really have to look at how it was done, with what values, with what morality. So a successful leader, what I call a virtuous leader, is the product of achievement times, you've heard of IQ, EQ, this is MQ, your moral quotient. And your moral quotient, I have a whole series of classes. That's where we're going to invite, don't you think? That's where we're going to invite Willie to talk. But the issues behind the moral quotient are too, let's say, extensive to go into great detail here. So I'm going to leave you with only one word. Just like the word I want you to remember in happiness is kindness. Are you getting tired on me? Are you okay?
No,
okay. Okay. Just trying to be kind.
I want to be kind to you.
Okay. So, the one word I want you to remember in happiness is be kind. Straight from the Dalai Lama. Well, being virtuous is treat people with respect. So the word is respect. Think about it. If I respect you, I'm not going to lie to you. If I respect you, I'm going to treat you in a very humane, supportive, and warm way. If I respect you, I'm not going to try to double-cross you, to trick you, you know. So if you're a leader and you treat people with respect, you've got the MQ not completely knocked, but considerably knocked. And when whether it's, I'm not going to talk about the president because that is one heck of a issue to divide people, but when I talk about anybody, it's Obama, it's JFK, whoever, there are two parts. One is, what did they achieve, whether you liked it or not, okay? And then the second part is, how did they do it? They do it by trickery, by lying, by deceiving people, or that they do it in a forthright way. Then if you have those two, a lot of the arguments you have is because President so-and-so was an SOB, and okay, let's put that aside. We agree. Now, what do you think of what he did? Let's say he won the Civil War, Lincoln. Okay, you didn't like Lincoln, and he was a depressive guy, not a very likable guy. He, had the blues all the time. But hey, he kept the nation together. How's that for an achievement? So when you look at a leader, you have to look at not only the achievement, and I told you what the pieces of that were, you have to look also at, how they achieve what they achieved. That'll eliminate a lot of discussions. But look at the great thing he did here. Okay. Now, next, I'm going to move on. You okay?
Yes.
Because we can get to substitutive.
Professor, do you mind if I switch to Spanish just to make it a little bit Spanglish? Esta parte para mí es muy importante y muy valiosa. Nosotros como líderes cristianos y como empresarios cristianos, porque va a haber momentos donde vamos a tener la oportunidad de doblegar nuestros valores cristianos y ética para llegar a un propósito, para tener más dinero, y ahí tenemos que cuidarnos mucho, porque el Señor quiere que seamos prósperos, pero tenemos que no comprometer nuestros valores. Yo creo que esto, definitivamente, si lo asociamos a la Escritura y los líderes que nosotros debemos de desarrollar, yo creo que esto definitivamente lo debemos aplicar en cada una de las transacciones con la gente, transacciones obviamente de dinero, negocios, todo. Así que creo que nos aplica perfectamente acá.
Si vamos a hablar en español, el único problema es que, pues si ustedes quieren, les hablo como si yo estaría todavía en México, que le pasé muy bien, muy lindo, pero si no les gusta eso, mira, vale, nosotros estamos aquí temporariamente hasta resolvamos el problema de la política, ¿no? O alternativamente, nosotros no necesitamos aprender liderazgo. Somos los líderes de Latinoamérica y siempre los hemos sido, ¿no? Así que tienen que decirme cuál español, pues nosotros somos la madre patria y vos sabés que todos ustedes son pequeños insectos derivados del gran cuerpo de lo que es ser un español. Y un español, por ejemplo, los cubanos, los dominicanos bailan así. Nosotros, los españoles, estamos por arriba de todos. Así que tendrían que decirme que español, pero bueno, cubano. Entonces, okay, the next, go ahead, next one. Okay, this is what is happening in the world. When televisions came out, 50s, it took like 20, 25 years for just about everyone to have a TV set. When the internet came out, it was 5, 10 years. Now, artificial intelligence, it's like this, straight up. And this curve is 6 months old. So it's almost even more. I mean, this is a technology that is introduced. And within 2 years, you have 100 million people, using ChatGPT. I mean, so classical good management is called, and I should have, remind me, Sebastian, let's add the front piece of the authentic leadership. A friend of mine, Bill George, an extraordinary executive, wrote a book called Authentic Leadership. And authentic leadership is an argument as to how you should behave as a leader. We talked a little bit about this today. You should be honest, you should be direct, you should be understanding, you should be transparent, all of these wonderful things. However, when you're dealing with a situation like that, you may not have time to be all those wonderful, really wonderful. Let's assume that you were the captain of the Titanic, except you figured out there weren't supposed to be any icebergs on that route. But you found out in enough time that there's an iceberg way. And first you say, there's no iceberg. Look, the radar says, Captain. So then you say, my God, there is. So then you're going to say, okay, let's call the officers together. Let's talk about what ships, huge ships, do when there's an iceberg. Should we turn all rudders to the left? Should we turn back? Like, what would be the best approach? Oh, left here, there's an iceberg over there. Now you've broken all tenets of authentic leadership. But when things are changing that fast, you will be out of business if you don't make some very rapid changes. And most people, even professors of management and even CEO, they're not really aware of what's happening. I told my doctor, I said, he has a very successful practice. I said, see all these people you got here? Just about all of them are going to be available for $30,000, $40,000. You see that receptionist? It's a nice lady person. For about $30,000, $40,000, you'll be able to get a robot that says, good morning. And then that robot will get your number and will say, hello, hello, Esther, hello, Jim, hello, Jack, which the receptionist may not know, these 200 people in your practice. Then this person, or this robot rather, will have tremendous knowledge of medicine and will ask you, what about here? What about that? Program by specialists. And within minutes, he'll say, look, you don't want to talk to Dr. Harris. You need a specialist. Let me get a specialist on the line. The 3 specialists is one. All that can be easily done, automated. You don't need a person. So that person there who is answering the phones will be gone. Some of the basic nursing work, reading, for instance, radiologists are going to be out of business because artificial intelligence can read an X-ray much, much better than radiologists. So next.
We're switching, taking a break.
Boy, pivoting.
Kindness.
You're pivoting. Okay. I've come up with a new model of leadership, which is helpful for these times. I wonder if you could get me a little water. That'd be great. Okay.
There we go.
This axis.
¿Está al aire? Okay.
Yeah, sí.
Está frío.
Now I think of you in a different way now.
You got it? Huh? Kind. Oh my God. I got it.
This axis is foresight. That helps you to be aware, of the future, of what might be coming. The founder of Analog Devices, which is the company that funded my company with $5 million, we lost their $5 million, and we were at a point of closing it, but fortunately, that's another story. We saved it. But I asked him, the company started at zero, 1965. It is now a $12 billion company. And I said, Ray, you're not a particularly good executive. I said, but you had incredible foresight. How do you explain that? And I thought I'd get a lecture on it. And he said, I listened. He said, I listened to friends. I listened to enemies. I listened to experts. I listened to people that weren't knowledgeable. I read the papers. I read books. So he became like this giant pulsing brain with information coming in. In fact, when I'm almost embarrassed to tell you this, when I was 36, he was in his 40s. I went to him. Imagine this happening to you, Willie. And I said, Ray, you have the greatest foresight of anyone that I've ever known in this field. You see around corners, like Jack Welch used to say. I said, but you suck as an executive. I'm 36 years old. He said, so I propose that you give up being chief executive, that I become chief executive. You continue for some period of time to chair the board and help guide the direction. He says, I agree with you. I said, this is it. That was a billionaire moment for me. Then he says, what would you do about Graham Sterling? What would you do about Hank Krabbe? What would you do about Mel Salin? He rattled off a couple of other names. I said, I'd fire them all because none of them are good enough for the company we need to build here. He says, I can't do that. My whole career is based on the support and the work of those guys. We need a few more years so they are all significantly wealthy and independent. So he says, I'll make you this deal. You're 36 and a half. The year and the month and the day you turn 40, you'll become CEO of the company. What did the kids say? Ray, I don't have that kind of time. Then I left. So that would have been a different, no FIU, no contribution to this community, but I'd be worth $1 billion. Okay, there are 4 kinds of people here because it's not enough to have foresight. You also need to have the courage, the boldness to make change. People that have both the foresight and the boldness, the foresight and the boldness are people like those that led Amazon. If they weren't bold, they'd be a very successful large bookstore now. But they're an everything store. And every movement, including moving everything to the cloud, they're one of the first to move all the information to the cloud, is what made. Now, Blockbuster is exactly the opposite. They saw DVDs. They said, oh, those are interesting. Then they saw that people started, sending electronically these videos and these songs. They didn't do anything about it. They went out of business. Meanwhile, next or close to them, there's a company that made DVDs, and they decided to hop on the electronic transmission, and they became extremely successful. In Uber, Kalanick, who was their CEO, one of the problems that CEOs have, and it's rare that you don't have that, is learn this word, hubris. Anybody know what, not you, Willie, because you know everything, but anybody else know what hubris is? Hubris is very easy for leaders to fall prey to. Hubris means that you think you're better than you are. You do A, you say, that's damn good. You do B, I'm even better. You do C, I can do anything. Moment you think you can do anything, and you're the very, very best, you don't make mistakes, you have blown it completely. Because one success or even 2 or 3 doesn't guarantee a 4th. So hubris is a Greek word that's saying thinking you are more than you are. And virtually every CEO, not every, let's say the majority of CEOs and leaders that I know fall prey. Even the great General Patton thought he was like, MacArthur actually, he pushed the Chinese beyond into China. He said, I can take China. And what happened is Truman said, I'm firing you. and we're not going to take China. We're not going to start a world war, over this. So Kalanick, in fact, there is a recording of him totally downgrading one of his drivers, and they had that on video. When they distributed that video, that was the end of Kalanick, the CEO of Uber. This is a different story. This is someone who won't bulldoze things. These are called bulldozers. These are stewards. The legacy that Steve Jobs left was so extraordinary that you could continue to perfect, advance that without a lot of foresight, without a lot of boldness. And that was Cook at Apple. Apple is still the product of what was there before him. So this model speaks to what's going on in the world. And I think if we had a group here, broke ourselves down into 3 or 4 groups, it would be difficult for us to imagine what's coming. And I say this because when I write a paper, I go back a week or 2 later and I found that things have changed. Just in the 2, I sent a paper in the Sloan Management Review, and I could do a better job now. It was only 3 weeks ago that I sent the paper. In closing, let me go back down to the real world.
Gracias, Pastor.
I think that I said it, and perhaps Willie said it even better. I now see myself as a continuation of Jesus' belief in leadership. I believe that, I'll give it to you in one line, my favorite lines in my teaching. Leadership is the axis on which the world turns. And that is not something I came up with. It's something that is a result of observations of great leaders. I don't know how many Cubans are in the room, but I'm going to say something that's going to shock you. I think that Fidel Castro is one of the great leaders of all time in Latin America. Extraordinarily intelligent, extraordinarily talented, able to work intensely for hours and hours. I've met with Chinese people who have incredible tolerance for hard work, and they said we couldn't keep up with Fidel. But unfortunately, he was going in the wrong direction. So, Hitler was extraordinary too. Germany was destroyed. He made Germany into a major industrial power, which, were it not for the Japanese, Germany might have won the war. Because the United States wasn't excited at all about going to the war. That is a European problem. And then all of a sudden, over Pearl Harbor, they said, we're in. There's a story, and it's a true story. I wish I had a cigar. We'll use this as a cigar. There's a meeting. It could be argued that the British are losing the war. They're bombing London. They've destroyed a good part of their army. And in walks Churchill with a cigar and a drink. You say, Prime Minister, why are you so happy? We got a terrible situation. He says, we just won the war. What do you mean? He said, the Americans are going to come in. And when the Americans are added to us, we win the war. So sometimes, it takes a terrible thing to be happy about. But he had foresight. He was half American, as you know, his mother. So he immediately said, well, we're going to win this war. He was thrilled that day. A lot of people were sorry, the poor airmen who were killed. No, he's like, we saved the world because the Americans are coming in together with us. So that's an example. And that was a terrible Japanese mistake of their leadership. And I think, I forgot his name, something like Tsukimoto or something like that. it was Churchill's ability to persuade Roosevelt. Come on. So I think that leaders make a tremendous difference in the world, whether it is at my old company, Analog Devices, at FIU, or at Alpha and Omega. So I would encourage all of you that have an inclination towards leadership to take leadership positions, because the future of our world depends on the quality and the values of our leaders. Thank you.